Welcome to Tonic Titans. This is where we sit down with genuine industry leaders for relaxed chats about what's made them the titans they are today. Hello, and welcome to our inaugural episode of Tonic Titans. Here we bring together some of the most successful leaders and biggest names across the financial industry to learn more about them, their journey, and what makes them tick. Now, we wanted a real bona fide titan for our first episode, and we're delighted to say that we found one. A very special one indeed. A huge welcome to Nadine Chakar. Now, before I pass to Nadine, it's worth me just stressing Nadine is a hugely respected leader whose career has spanned multiple C-suite roles amidst a ton of growth and success, both company and personal, across global custodian banks, dealer banks, buy-side firms, and major infrastructure providers. Nadine is currently Global Head of Digital Assets at DTCC in what we know is a game-changing role that brings scalable digital asset technology solutions to the wider market. I'll let Nadine share more there. Now, I don't want to give any more away because that's the whole point. That's the reason we're here. We're going to hear it firsthand from Nadine. But Nadine, a real treat to have you on. Thank you so much for being our first ever Tonic Titan.
Chris, thank you so much. Let me tell you, we're digging up after 3 days of snow here. So that intro is definitely a morale booster. And thank you for having me. I'm really excited for our chat.
Absolute pleasure. And I know I did tell you, Nadine, offline that it's 17 degrees in London today, just to make you feel even worse.
Chris, you're not scoring any points, my friend. It started snowing. We're digging up out of 2 feet of snow. So let's not go there.
My bad. Small wins for us.
Small wins, that's right.
So, look, Nadine, the way we were going to play this out is we were going to start with, I guess, a light-hearted, we call it Quickfire favourites round, just to loosen up a little and allow our audience to find out a bit more about you. And then we'll inevitably ask a bit more about your career and how it's played out. So, let's get stuck in. Favourites, Nadine. Favourite food?
Favorite food? Well, Chris, you know I'm of Lebanese descent, so it's Lebanese food. It's our gift to the world. There's nothing better. So Lebanese all the way.
I know from personal experience you've got incredible taste in restaurants as well. So
I love my restaurants, you're right, but I adore Lebanese food.
Absolutely love it. No surprise there. Next one, a bit more highbrow. Favorite book?
Favorite book? God, there's a lot of them, but since we're going to be talking about tokenization and innovation, I'll tell you, I think the book that I loved reading these past couple of months is, I think the book is called The Innovator by Walter Isaacson. He's a prolific biographer, and it's really cool. He's gone through from the 19th century on to today and profiled some of the biggest innovators throughout our times that really have given us the platform upon which we're building this 21st century digital infrastructure. It's a pretty good book. I'd highly recommend it as a good foundation. And it's interesting how the people that came before us have their vision, what they struggled with, their challenges. And it's great because you see that we built on the innovation and imagination of one generation after another. And today we're taking full advantage of their work, which is pretty cool.
I've taken a note myself, actually. I wasn't aware of that one.
It's maybe a year or so old, 18 months, but it's pretty good.
And what about, look, you travel a lot, I know that, but favorite country or place?
Favorite country or place? Well, I am sitting in Boston, Massachusetts right now, which is home, and I love it. I'm very blessed to live here. But I also have got a very strong, they say in French, penchant for France, south of France in particular, and where I grew up in Lebanon. So those are wherever I travel in the world. When I get back to any one of these three places, it's home, and I just love it. But to your point, Chris, I've been blessed to be able to travel around the world, and every country has got something spectacular and special about it. But you only have one home, if you will. And for me, it's Boston.
Boston's an awesome city, but no one would dispute the south of France either.
South of France is magnificent. It's a good place to unwind and relax.
And the last one, just to round up this round, favorite thing to do in your spare time? I know you don't have much.
Not a lot. I actually love to cook. I like the mindfulness of being able to chop and saute and things like that. And also in the summer, for all the same reasons, I love tending to my garden. It's, you put your headsets on, you take a digital break. There's no emails, there's no phones. And it's sort of that cleanse just is awesome. It just restores the soul, if you will, and allows you to focus. So cooking when I can, and definitely in the summer, I love tending to the garden.
Makes perfect sense. I'm still working on my work-life balance there, but they sound like awesome suggestions.
Listen, I have a good friend that says, work balance is important, but at some point you realize you can't have them at the same time. So when you're working, give it your all. And then when you do have the free time to balance it out. But we unfortunately live and grew up in a time where we've mastered multitasking, which is a little bit hard to get that life balance, but it's there, Chris. I would encourage you to seek it out.
I could learn a lot. Thank you so much. So I think we're going to get a bit deeper into your journey, if you don't mind. And it's probably important that we start with today, and then maybe we'll work back in time. So do you mind just giving us the skinny on what your world looks like today in terms of current role and day-to-day responsibilities, focus areas?
So, Chris, as you mentioned, I am the global head of DTCC Digital Assets. I'm also a member of the executive committee of the firm. So I've got firm-wide responsibilities as well as my divisional responsibility for digital assets. I would say no 2 days are the same. I joined DTCC about 2 years ago on the back of an acquisition that DTCC did. I was the CEO of a small fintech firm called Securrency. And, I say this all the time, and I'd be remiss not to say that I give our CEO, Frank Lasella, my colleagues on the executive board and the board itself, lots of credit for having the foresight, if you will, in 23, 24, to start thinking about what's a good hedge for financial market infrastructure. Securrency was it. So we joined DTCC in 24, took over my functions, and started building a global digital assets business for DTCC. So no 2 days are the same. As I said, I would say the routine part of my job is a lot of the administrative or the firm-like functions that are there. But I'll tell you, a lot of my time is dedicated to doing a couple of things, which are loosely defined, but incredibly impactful. So one is the team. It is very hard to find people in the industry that are fluent in both technology and market infrastructure. You can find either or, but you can't find both. So being out there, meeting with people that can enrich our team and enrich our client experience is critical. Also, as a team, we spend a lot of time learning, educating, brainstorming. I'll tell you, this is probably the most humbling job I've ever had. And I've had some big jobs and I've had some big setbacks in my career. But I'll tell you that as we're building something that there is no roadmap, right? It's an uncharted path. You talk to a lot of people, you read, you talk to your clients, your regulators, your peers, your competitors. And what I find myself is to be more wrong than right on that journey. But what's really cool about this is every success, every failure is pointing us in the right direction. And our ambition is to be part of building a very secure, resilient, scalable digital financial market infrastructure. So we can start to, if you will, introduce the rails of the 21st century when it comes to capital markets. So the day comes, and usually, like today, I knew for sure I was talking to you. I just don't know what the rest of my day is going to be like. And that's the exhilarating part of what we do. But we're dedicated and dedicating all our efforts and energies to, make DTCC a catalyst as we build the digital market infrastructure of tomorrow.
Thank you. I'm sure our listeners are aware already, but the importance of your role and your team, and you've got an awesome bunch of folk around you, right, is critical, not just for DTCC, but for the whole industry, bearing in mind the direction of travel here.
We are, Chris, I know you're aware of this, but we are owned and governed by our participants. So everything that we do is at the service of our clients. So we work with them, we're building for them. And by definition, we're doing it not just for the US markets, but everybody knows when you start to look at digital assets, they tend to be global assets. So we've got a lot of collaboration going around the world so we can make sure that what we're building is sustainable and usable for the next couple of centuries. Well, maybe not centuries, decades. We'll go with decades just because technology just changes so much.
Yeah, we'll start there, but this is the long game for sure. And I'm sure our audience is aware of that. Why don't we take a step back? So really good context for everyone to understand exactly what your role looks like today. Chance to step back in your career journey and I guess the chain of roles that have taken you to this point as a real industry titan. Some of this stuff is going to, no doubt, bring up fond, happy memories. Some of this stuff might be a bit more uncomfortable, conscious you alluded to sort of tougher times in career. But why don't you take us right back to the start to start off with? What did you want to be growing up? Sounds like a very deep question, but it's probably worth starting with.
Very deep question,
Yes.
Chris, for this time of morning. So both of my parents were in the medical field. My dad was an amazing cardiovascular surgeon. My mom was an amazing nurse. And so needless to say, all three kids, we all were definitely interested in doing something in the medical field. I was born actually in the US, but raised pretty much all my life in Lebanon, in Beirut, Lebanon, and came back to Boston to go to school. So you can imagine, Chris, I grew up in the middle of a civil war, but the experiences we had, totally masked the inconvenience of living during a war. But as they say, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. So medicine was on my mind. Believe it or not, being a surgeon during a war is very hard on the individual and the family. So my father did not want us to follow in his footsteps. So one of the compromises was, all right, I'll become a dentist. Why? I have no idea. But needless to say, I came to Boston. My English was fairly limited. So I went to one university where I really had a hard time adjusting. So I eventually transferred to Boston University, where there was a more cosmopolitan feel to that, and enrolled, and very quickly went like, oh God, this is just not for me. So the thought of having my hands in somebody's mouth for 12 hours a day was just not appealing, just not. So flipped and started studying economics and business. When I graduated, my first job was at State Street Bank down the street from here. And I'll tell you, Chris, for this first 6 months, I had no idea what I was doing. I was doing something. Then I'd come home in the evening and my dad would go, well, are you a broker? I'm like, no. Are you a portfolio manager? I'm like, no, I know what those things are. They're definitely not that. But that was, the time I graduated was the late 70s, early 80s. And it was the emergence of a global custodian. That's what State Street did. So I used to get a piece of paper. I would type it in a dumb terminal. I would make sure that what I put in and what was on the screen were the same. And it's just like, geez, I'm a genius, right? I think I did that for about 18 months, give or take. But I will tell you, looking back today, it was the foundation of everything that we did, because that was before the industry was functionalized. So we got a very good understanding of how markets work. And it was at a very young time in my career that I also realized, like, there's so many inefficiencies in the market, and you've got very large firms that they're filling in the white noise, if you will, on trying to compensate for these inefficiencies. And that's what global custodians do. And then we went through a series of consolidations. But I still remember being straight out of school. I probably had more gear on me that I got paid in salary at the time, right? But I remember my first day of training, a senior manager from State Street shows up, and he was flashing a passport in his hand. And what he said to all of us was, guys, go get one of these, because you're going to use this more than you'd imagine. And in those days, Chris, not a lot of Americans actually had passports. So that still is clear in my head as it was yesterday, because that actually allowed me to do something that was really fundamental in my career, which is eventually left State Street, went to what was the Boston company, which got acquired by Mellon and then became BNY Mellon. But in that course of my career, I moved away from just being very focused on operations and striking an NAV and doing all that good stuff, to now getting more of an exposure of what is financial technology. And this is where I realized I have enough nerdiness in me to be able to talk a good game, but probably not technical enough to be able to code and write all these things that I could dream of. That's where I caught the technology bug that was there. And it also gave me the opportunity. I got one call many years ago. It was on, I still remember that, it was on Super Bowl Sunday. The head of our division asked to see me first thing Monday morning. Like, seriously, Super Bowl night and then be in the office at 7 o'clock Monday morning? That wasn't cool. But I'll tell you, that was probably the biggest break in my career when I was asked to move from Boston to the Netherlands, spend a couple of months there and set up what we've known to be a BNY Mellon. And I will tell you, that period of time, now it was opportunistic on my half. I had a passport. I was able to jump on that flight. He told me on Monday, I was there Friday. And a 6 months career ended up being 15 years, which is probably, so when you go back to travel and setting up businesses from scratch and learning how to work with different cultures. And it was honestly the best time of my life, the best time professionally as well. I've made lifelong friends that we still keep in touch with today. If any of my old ABN AMRO Mellon people are watching here, guys, we do need to get that reunion up and running this year, but it was phenomenal. Eventually, I came back to New York. At that time, the Mellon and Bank of New York merger was consumed, and then we had the financial crisis. I had to come back to Boston for family and personal reasons, so I could no longer balance the movement between New York and Boston. I needed to be in Boston full time. So I was very fortunate to join Manulife, which is a Canadian insurance and investment firm. They own John Hancock here in Boston, and became their chief operating officer for the investment side, head of operations, data, all that good stuff. And then a phenomenal project to help them really reimagine their front, middle, and back office. That got me close to the time where you talk about boomerang career. So I got a call from State Street, two individuals that I have worked with all my career, value very highly. Ron O'Hanley, who's the current CEO of State Street, and a gentleman by the name of Lou Maori, who needs no introduction in this industry. This was at the time State Street was acquiring Charles River. So I went back to State Street to backfill for Lou and run capital markets. And I'm going through the stream, Chris, on purpose, because you'll see how it builds up. When I was running capital markets, the biggest P&L for State Street, the most profitable. But there is where I started getting the bug for Bitcoin. And because when I was looking at, foreign exchange, that you're doing dollar yen, dollar euro, the numbers change, right? But coin, whether it's in Japan, Hong Kong, or the US, it's roughly the same thing. The price discrepancy isn't that big as it is in foreign exchange. So I started wondering, what would happen if all this money, these transactions now started to convert to crypto? But to tell you how totally naive I was. So I'm like, let me go make a case to go buy a couple $100,000 of Bitcoin. And like that, we could start to experiment and understand how it behaves, how it correlates to different market events, so on and so forth. So I go to chief risk officer, I go to the CFO. I'm like, guys, I just need to buy a small bucket of Bitcoin and go back. I mean, it was cheap, it was dirt cheap. And they looked at me and goes, well, Nadine, under I think it's Sarbanes-Oxley, we can't hold commodities. So I'm like, guys, come on, I'll buy it. We'll write it off. And I'm as cocky, I've got this all figured out. And then the chief risk officer looks at me and goes, what if it goes up? I'm like, that's not going anywhere, right? So obviously, had we done that and held to it, we would have been in a world of hurt. But on the flip side, it probably would have financed all of that. So that is where, if you will, I caught the bug and I started to look into the implications of that. And I moved very quickly from crypto to tokenization. And at that time, we invested in a company called Securrency. I also started to think through the implications of these infrastructures, right? So long story short, so Ron and Lou said, well, if you really, really believe this, would you give up your role as head of capital markets and focus on this? So I left. That's how strong my conviction was. So I left everything behind, lucrative P&Ls, lots of people, and moved into a role where it was me, myself, and I for a short period of time. And then we got like-minded people to join us. But I felt very strongly about, and then SAB 121 hit, if you may remember. So our plans to do crypto custody and all that stuff stalled quite a bit. So I moved and said, all right, maybe it's easier to do it from a fintech angle. So I was very fortunate to meet Dan Doney, who's the founder of Securrency, Jenna Steinberg from WisdomTree, who was a very large shareholder, and said, yeah, we'd love to have you as CEO. And so I joined January of 23. And I'll tell you, within a couple of months, Chris, I realized the power of Dan's vision, the complexity of the platform he had built, but also realized very, very quickly two things. There'll never be enough money as a fintech for us to do the vision, roll out the vision that we have. And then remember, 23 was the time of the crypto winter. So raising money was terrible, and added to a person who's fairly an introvert. So running around passing the hat was not my cup of tea. But really, it was just impossible to run. And I knew it was part of the job, but it was just really hard to raise money. But most importantly was, if we wanted to be in the heart of the discussion, deploy our technology and our vision to transform the markets for decades to come, there was only one place to go and have that conversation, and that was the DTCC. Now, lucky for me, I had worked with Frank LaSala for a long period of time at the Bank of New York. So we got together, we had breakfast, and Frank goes, we believe in this. We want to hedge. Originally, we talked about an investment. And I'll tell you, in the summer of 23, Frank calls back and goes, I got good news and I got bad news. I'm like, all right, what's the bad news? And he goes, we're not investing. And then I went like that. And he goes, but we really would love to buy you guys and have you join our team. I go back to the board, I go back to Dan, and it took less than 5 minutes to say, yes, that's right. And the rest is history. So we've got a phenomenal team at DTCC. Nobody knows the markets. I mean, these guys bleed market infrastructure. They care about it. They know it like nobody's business. And when you overlay our vision, our technical expertise on the digital side, that's what got us to December of last year and that watershed moment with the no action letter. And I can't tell you the rest is history because we are writing history right now.
That was an awesome response. You're making my job very easy, by the way.
I try, Chris. I like what you do for me. I try to make your job easy.
I see. You're just taking care of me.
I'm trying, dude. I'm trying.
That was an incredible response. You've taken me through about 10 questions, to be honest. We've gone through the whole career loop and then the loop back to Boston and ultimately to DTCC to sort of, I know it's not the end of the story. This is a brand new chapter.
We're writing the story as we speak, but I wanted to show how, just like the innovators I talked about, everything we're doing today was built on enhancements, if you will, continuation of their work for my career. That's where it all started. And I think like everybody else's career these days, it's no longer just one slope that you go on. It's like a crab walk and you just move, but they're all heading in the right direction. And the experiences that I've built over time is what's made this moment happen for me from a professional perspective.
Absolutely. I'm a huge believer that everything that happens from this point onwards is a result of all of the work and all of the experiences that you've learned over the years, right, that have driven you to this moment. So I'd love to dig in a little bit more on the DTCC no action letter, but I might, if you don't mind, just park that up for a second, just to squeeze in a couple of follow-up questions about you, actually, because your journey is immense through those roles and continents and moving your way up to these C-suite roles and then maintaining and growing in every organization. Something you mentioned, Nadine, right at the start of your response was your childhood. And you talked about, it was a tough childhood, it sounds like, right? Civil War was going on.
My childhood was idyllic. It was where it happened. That was tough. It was a tough neighborhood, yeah.
I was just going to ask, how's that contributed towards your growth and your drive over the years?
It's funny. I've thought of that often, Chris, and it's built resiliency in me that, listen, as I said, I've had an amazing childhood, and I'm not sure I should disclose that in public, but when I left Lebanon, it was the first time that I was totally on my own, and the airports were closed. It was a long journey to get from Beirut, which I had to take a boat to get me to Larnaca, which is in Cyprus, from Cyprus to Greece, from Greece to Frankfurt, from Frankfurt to JFK, from JFK to Boston. Think about this, a 17-year-old. I had traveled before, but never on my own. You got your family, you got an entourage, you got protection. So what it built, a couple of things, is trust in yourself. There's really nothing. If you can survive a war, you can survive anything from career setbacks to office politics to things not going your way. Now, does it mean you like it and you get used to it? No. But do you have that self-confidence and that belief that you probably could do anything? And I would say the answer is yes. I mean, I'll tell you, when I moved to the Netherlands, I would wake up in the middle of the night going what am I doing here? I don't know how to run a company. I don't, I've had teams to run, but I wasn't responsible for hundreds of people. And what do I know about running a bank, right? But I put my mind to it, and I knew that the worst that could happen to me never happened, and anything else is gravy. So I think it's resilience, but it's also curiosity, and it's grit and determination. I told you, when I first came to the US, my English was terrible. I can understand it just because we get educated in 3 languages. So Arabic and French are my primary languages, and English is my third one. So I couldn't understand when people talk in slang or expressions and things like that, but I couldn't express myself, right? I couldn't express myself at all. But that also taught me about curiosity, right? What are they saying? And I used to walk around. I mean, I still do that. The only difference is in the old days, I used to walk around with a small dictionary that I would pop in my pocket. Today, I walk around with an iPad. And, my first couple of days in global markets, I would Google a lot of things that people would say. Now, that belief in myself is what made me say, sure, I'll go and run capital markets, right? What do I know about capital markets? Obviously, in my old days, I ran securities lending programs. I was a user of foreign exchange, but I never had direct managerial responsibilities. I didn't have pension plan money at stake here. So I think that had a lot to do with this. And I never take tomorrow for granted because we never knew when we went to bed whether there was going to be a tomorrow or not. But with all that said, Chris, I wouldn't trade that growing up the way we have where we were for anything else in the world.
Thank you, Nadine. I think it just played back some of the attributes, sort of qualities that you're talking about: grit, resilience, self-belief, sort of intellectual curiosity. That's your core, right? And that goes a hell of a long way.
You don't learn that in school. And that's why I say to you, I'll never trade that for anything else. Like, it's funny when I tell people I grew up in Lebanon, went to school in Lebanon, it's like, oh, you poor child. And it's not. It's would I much prefer to know that we could live in security and not have to worry about when you go out if you're going to come back. Yeah. But it also allows you to worry about what matters and manage what you can control. And there's certain things that you leave it up to your faith and you plow through it.
And I guess along a similar line, what would you say your biggest lesson learned has been on the way? You've had this incredible journey across multiple organizations, different roles, and it's difficult, I'm sure, to pinpoint a single lesson learned. But is there something that springs to mind?
It's to your point, there's a lot of them, and each one of them made me the person that I am today. But I would tell you, as you grow into your career, you stop leading from the front and you sort of lead from the back to a certain extent, right? You want to get your teams to be in those positions. And honestly, what I do today and spend a fair amount of my time on is making sure that the environment is right for my team and for DTCC to do its best work. It took me a long time to learn that through a series of successes and lots of failures and people getting pretty annoyed at me. And, still to this day, I got people say, you drive us nuts, but we know your heart is in the right place. And the work that we do too is one where we're swimming upstream. We're taking organizations that have been around for 200 plus years in certain instances, or in our situation, 55 years. And we're pushing people to change how they work, how they think, how the tools that they use. And that's uncomfortable for everybody. So for me, it's been more of how do I convince people versus like trying to push them to do something that's not there. But also with age, I guess, hopefully I'm aging like a good wine where you sort of appreciate that not every battle is worth fighting, as long as I still believe that I still need to win the war, but there's going to be setbacks along the way. And looking at these setbacks, and I think I said that earlier, looking at these setbacks with the same value that I look at good outcomes. The good and the bad is what makes us what we are today, and hopefully it will help us continue to innovate in the marketplace. I've learned patience. I'm a fairly impatient person. And anybody listening to this, that
Don't be unfair on yourself.
I know I'm being too hard on myself, but I am a fairly impatient person because I just feel this moment in time will pass us unless we do something meaningful in a short period of time. But that impatience needs to also be contained, if you will, and sometimes put that impatience to work for the common good. Have I learned all the lessons I have to learn? Probably not, Chris. I think there's, for all of us, there's still a path that's not well traveled, and we're going to learn a lot as we go through this.
We're all still learning. Thank you so much. So, Nadine, coming back to now for a moment, and I guess your key focus areas today. We've talked about DTCC and the importance of your role there. Major announcement in December regarding the no action letter received from SEC for digital assets. Can you talk us through that and what it means next?
Chris, the no action letter, I would, at least in my very humble opinion, is a watershed moment, historical moment for not just DTCC, but for the U.S. markets. It's everything we believe we need to do. So this letter is the first time we've seen the SEC endorse. And I don't know if endorse is the right term, but at least it's given us permission. It's probably a better way to put it, to be able to tokenize the DTCC inventory in a way that's safe, that's secure, scalable, and resilient. So it's a 3-year letter. And the 3-year is not because we've asked for certain things that expire. We're a systemically important organization. We're a depository. So a lot of what we do is driven by rule books and a lot of different procedural issues. Even our technology needs to be Tier 1 Reg SCI compliant. So there's a lot of regulatory work So what we've asked the regulators is to give us permission to grow into these factors over time as we start to roll out our tokenization component. So what have we done with that piece of paper in hand that really gives us permission to move forward? We have been busy. The infrastructure itself, so the tokenization engines, the data engines, all that had been operational for a while. We were the partner for Wisdom Tree. We're also support other fund managers on that platform. So the platform itself is operational, but neither Dan and I in our wildest dreams did I ever think that we will put $100 trillion on that platform, right? So if you go back to what I said earlier, we were very early on, we just realized that we needed. So we've been working with the DTCC technology teams, right? The people that are behind T+1, Treasury Clearing. They're the guys that ensure that $4 quadrillion of settlements a year operate like clockwork. So we've been working with them to ensure that our platforms are scalable, they're resilient, and can handle a lot of that flow that will come our way. The other thing that we've done is we're integrating, and that's no small feat, Web3 technology with traditional technology and try to integrate them so clients can execute conversion orders to us and we can convert whatever they ask us to convert and then track that ownership in real time. The tokenization at DTCC is voluntary. Like a participant will tell us to tokenize. We're just not going to tokenize and sit on that. So to give our clients the ability to manage their own digital strategies and ambitions, also they need to give thought to how they integrate back to their own ecosystems, because we know not everything is going to tokenize, at least it's not going to tokenize at the same speed. So for a long period of time, we, as long as our participants, we will need to treat the new assets with the same care as we treat the old assets or the legacy assets and ensure a complete harmony between the old and the new. So that is the work that we've embarked on. We've put a lot of thoughts into our token. So you won't see us say, we need clients to comply to this format or to do this or to do that. We have not done that. Because we're market infrastructure, we deliberately want it to be open in our approach. Now, as long as there's certain security and scale criteria that work, we will work with our clients to create that integration. So where are we right now? We're at the stage where we're enabling DTC, the depository, to be able to provide tokenization services that will be provided by the depository using our tools and frameworks and product. We have rolled out what we call is LedgerScan, and LedgerScan is an incredible tool that allows you to track ownership in real time. So anytime a token changes state, we should be able to see that and monitor that. So again, if something bad happens, something goes wrong with the token, we should be able to exert our good control functions and bring it back, right? We always want to make sure that one security equals one token and they don't multiply like rabbits, right? So you just got to make sure that's there. So, and lastly, we have done it in a way to ensure that investors' ownership doesn't change, investor rights are protected, and we're laying out some of the most innovative technology that's out there. Now, it does take a village, and we're working with different L1s and L2s to ensure that clients can seek the liquidity they need on the chains that are most appropriate for their own use cases. And then, Chris, I think you're familiar with something we call the Great Collateral Experiment. So that hopefully will come on board towards the latter half of the year, where we need to give these tokens value for our clients, right? So our ambition someday is to tokenize all $100 trillion. We're starting very small right now with the Russell 1000 ETFs tied to major indices, treasuries, and other fixed income. But that's a nice cross section. But one would say, great, you've tokenized all that, so what? The so what is really up to our clients to figure out what they want to do with these tokens. There's loads of DeFi instruments and strategies they can invest in. Obviously, there is well-proven abilities of reducing cost and managing capital. And the collateral platform that we're rolling out, again, we're not providing collateral management services. We're providing a platform where clients can meet and exchange collateral at the speed of the network, hopefully reducing friction and simplifying collateral management, trading, and operations and all that good stuff. And then we are open for other firms to come in and build applications to, again, enable our clients to be able to leverage these tokens in a smart way. And we're also partnering with a lot of L1s. I think we've been very public with our relationship with Canton, and Canton is definitely the first. There'll be many more that will come out there, but if you follow the model that we're doing with Canton, same thing, we're enabling institutions to be able to run their collateral on Canton or any other L1 that they so choose. They're all going to depend on their own particular circumstances. And last but not least, obviously been public and working with also financial market infrastructure in the US, most notably NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange. So you could see us, what we're trying to do is just making sure that tokenization is safe, is secure, and really propels and enables other financial institutions right now to do what they need to do, if you will, to advance and execute on their own digital strategies from there. So, it's more like the enterprise, the Starship Enterprise, where, you've got these different units that integrate into it. And then DTCC can push out tokens as clients instruct us to do that. So as I said earlier, everything that we're building with our clients for our clients. We are open. So we're working with big tech, fintech. We don't have all the answers. We're working with our clients to do that. It's going to be a journey that at some point people will see that unless you're in the business of infrastructure, there's no point in competing on infrastructure. If you're a fund manager or if you're a broker dealer, leverage a common infrastructure where we can then start to work on things that we throw around like it's interoperable, but we know nothing is interoperable. They're interconnected today, but we're spending a lot of time on thinking through with our partners, are there rules we should be thinking of, standards we should be thinking of? At DTCC, we're very focused, obviously, on compliance. We're focused on data. And that's why we encapsulate these features in our tokens. So lots of cool stuff. And we're also geared up to either provide these as a service, or if firms would want to install those capabilities on-prem and use them themselves. Again, as long as we can bring the industry together and get us all to collaborate to build the great future, then we're okay with that. We're here to serve.
You guys are. I know that. And it's, a really nice overview. And it is worth reminding folk that a ton of good content available online. I know from you guys, right? I know you spoke with Brian Steele recently about the no action letter. We know you guys are genuinely in the heart of the digital asset movement, and strongly encourage anyone listening that isn't aware of DTC's offering to find out more. It's going to be integral.
Oh, thank you for that, Chris. The risk of sounding like an infomercial, but would urge people to go to DTCC.com. There's a microsite in there that has the real letter that came from the SEC, a lot of the things that we're working on. And then as we get more L1s or more things, we will publish there. And if you happen to be a DTCC participant, please reach out to your relationship manager as well. But we answer to anything, emails, texts, smoke signals, and pigeons as well. But we want to be useful to help our participants, move on this journey.
That's the first time, Nadine, that I think I've heard digital assets and pigeons mentioned in the same sentence.
I'm telling you, we're just incredibly innovative, Chris. We can make the old and the new work. If you heard me on the podcast with Brian, I talked about the Flintstones and the Jetsons coexisting, and then, started complaining that this new generation probably doesn't even know about the Flintstones. But I'll tell you guys, greatest cartoon ever.
I was a big fan. More of the Flintstones, actually. More of the Flintstones. Yeah, Barney Rubble was a legend. Something you mentioned there was the younger generations. I think we should bring this back actually to those guys, because you've had this incredible journey which is going to carry on with the growth that you're building at DTC Digital Assets. But bringing this back to, I guess, graduates, youngsters, future leaders that are starting out in financial services today. What would be, I guess, short-winded advice for those guys based on everything that you've seen and learned?
A couple of things. I mean, we grew up, right, people telling us, learn math, learn languages, and that still applies today. But what you see in this new world of finance is the lines between finance and technology are blurred. There's a convergence of that. So I would encourage everybody to be fluent in both. You don't need to be a coder, or you don't need to be a PhD in math. Focus and specialize on something, but just be aware that there's a convergence there. And the one thing that also we seem to be losing a bit of touch on is don't lose touch with the human side. Soft skills matter. So these soft skills in a world of AI, do you know what the most important skill for AI right now is? People that can write. So don't lose track of that. So, don't poo-poo soft skills. I think they're really, really important. I would also tell you, I read a headline the other day, so this is not from me, but it stayed in my head, is adopt a beta mindset, right? Like get comfortable with being wrong. And for my own career, I am more wrong than I'm right, but it's been really helpful. And I said, at the end of the day, the world is moving too fast. So just continue to be curious, just continue to build resiliency. And most importantly, never, ever give up. There's a big contribution in this world that you're going to make. We're counting on this new generation. I mean, we're learning it, in retrospect, this new generation, they're learning it natively. They'll be able to contribute and move the ball further along faster than we would be. So we're building the path forward and anxiously waiting for that next generation to take it over and take it over the top. So looking forward to working with them as we pass the torch at some point.
Nadine, thank you so much. Super valuable, right? For any youngsters listening to this, from a real life Titan.
You're making my head get bigger and bigger, Chris, like this.
You're a humble lady, and I know you are, so it's no bad thing to give you some praise.
I've been very, very fortunate throughout my personal and my professional journey. And don't get me wrong, there's been a lot of hard work, but I've been very lucky to have met a lot of people along the way that have believed in me when I didn't and have forged a way forward. And that's what I wish anybody listening to this is. I do hope you have people like that in your life to help you continue the journey.
No, it's a great point. We're absolutely nothing without the team. This is a team game, start to finish. Nadine, thank you so much.
My pleasure, Chris. Thank you for having me and also being the first on this podcast. The good news is it's only going to get better with your next guest.
No, not at all. Don't say that. It's been an incredible start. You've been a star. I have to admit, I've learned a ton about you and your journey. No doubt our listeners have too. All super inspiring. So huge kudos to you, Nadine. Best of luck in your current role. Not that you need it. You're going to continue to smash it, no doubt. But thank you so much, Nadine.